This is Emily,
Henley,
and Sammy, and you're listening to Too Scary, Didn't Watch.
Daniel, Isa, thank you so much for joining us. Sammy and I are huge fans.
Thank you.
We did Cam on the podcast. We both love How to Blow Up a Pipeline, and so are very excited to cover this film. We're going to start with the first question we always ask our guests, which is, what's your relationship to horror and has it evolved over time? And specifically, was there a horror movie you saw as a kid or a younger person that kind of like shaped your relationship to it?
Oh, 100%. So I was the horror fan of the two of us growing up. I think the first movie that like really scarred me was Saw. I was not ready for it. I thought I was. Like, I hung out with the cool kids who like smoked cigarettes and like pierced ourselves, you know? So I was like, yeah, I'm tough. I can watch. I was so scared. And I caught myself for like years after that. Whenever I would say something like, oh, I fucking hate my life, I'd be like, no, don't say that. Like, Jigsaw will come for you, you know? Like,
he's gonna teach you out on his little tricycle ready.
Like, I was like, I love being alive. I love being a teenager. I love my period. Everything's good. Like, it like really, really got to me.
That's the thing that people forget about Saw. It's like a morality play. It's really
right.
intense.
And I think the scariest villains are always the ones that you like kind of agree with, you know? And that's what was so scary to me about Jigsaw is I was like, well, like, you're not entirely wrong.
Like, we get it. Jigsaw, we get it. Fair. Daniel, what about you?
I grew up in a super movie household. Like, my parents loved film and we'd watch like several movies a week together, and like, but my parents hated horror movies. And so it was like a real steady diet of like, you know, international art house movies, and like they like popcorn movies, but like sci-fi movies and like, you know, stuff like that. And they just both hate horror. They're both dreading coming to the premiere of this. And so I actually didn't really get seriously into horror until I started working with Issa. Like, that was, I think, something in many ways that she brought to this collaboration. Like, there were horror movies that I'd seen and loved. Like, I loved The Shining and Silence of the Lambs and had since a young age, but it wasn't honestly until after we had already made Cam that, you know, I realized like, okay, like I have a little bit now of a stake in the horror industry, even though we didn't really make Cam thinking it would be received as a horror movie. We really thought of it as like just like a kind of surreal thriller, and then all of a sudden people were like, no, it's a horror film, and we were like, okay. So like actually in the year after Cam, I went and watched, like, I'd never seen Saw. And I'd never seen, you know, the Halloween movies. I'd never seen, you know, like a bunch of things. And so I spent about a year. If you look at my letterbox, like 2019 is the year that I was like, I'm gonna learn a lot about horror. And
the first time
so,
I sent him lists, it was great.
Yeah, which is really interesting. It's an interesting, I think, genre to kind of come to a little bit more as like a fully formed person, you know. And so, but I think as a result, like, I think in my heart of hearts, like it's always been a little bit more weirdly of like an academic pursuit for me than necessarily of like a kind of filmmaking that as much I have like in my bones, which is interesting. And I think something that, you know, I want to continue to like, you know, learn more about and get better at, especially because like, I love the horror film community so much. Like, I think it's really like it's the most tried and true like film fandom community that we still have. It's like the bedrock of cinema are horror fans, and I have so much gratitude and respect for that. And you know, I think as a result, like it's a community that I really just I want to do right by, you know, as much as I can.
It's true. I mean, I think that it's one of our last communal spaces is people actually going to see a horror movie together in a movie theater.
Yes.
We don't tend to congregate as groups that much anymore. So we have to hold on to the moments
brings
we
the
do.
people together.
Yeah. I think we're doing like a Don't See Faces Alone, Bring a Friend promotion at some point, which I'm very excited about. And I will say that I made this movie in part also for my mother in particular, knowing so well how she reacts to like gore and like in particular like final fight scenes in movies. She always starts screaming at the protagonist to just get it. I used to see in a bunch of movies with my mom, so she gets so like really I've always had her like sitting by my side like yelling at the screen while making this so I'm very excited
At
to
the
show it to her
premiere,
in a few
everyone
days.
will be watching the movie, and I will be watching Danny's mother.
Yes.
So it's like a full contact sport. It's like your entire body is involved. Wait, okay. So also you two met when you were in high school, right? So you guys are longtime collaborators.
Yes.
How can you talk a little bit more about that, about your creative partnership specifically, and like how you guys divide responsibilities and also what makes it work between the two of you?
Yeah. We met via, I can't remember if it was MySpace or Facebook, but it was an internet post, which I think is relevant. And my best friend knew him. We went to different high schools, but my best friend knew him and posted on my wall or something, I think you need to meet this guy. And I was like, why? Okay. And I mean, props to Ariana, shout out, because it's an enduring, going on almost 20 years now, friendship. That
I know 20 years in May. 20 years May 4th.
20 years in May.
Oh, that's beautiful.
How do you know the date that we met? That is, I mean, I'm touched.
I'm sure you can look up the MySpace post. I'm sure it's in like.
I remember because we dated
for a year.
And I just remember that we had something about May the 4th be with you, and then that was a thing that interfaced with our relationship.
I forgot about that.
It's like that's like one of those buried memories. But yeah, we dated for a year. I had a theater company that I'd started with a different friend, but I had a play that I was writing and directing, and Issa came on and kind of, became the creative producer, stage manager, of that play. And, and then just kind of everything that we made, she ended up being a part of, and like working together on. And then when we went to go make our first film, it was, something that we just developed from the ground up together. And the division of labor in terms of like the formal crediting ended up kind of being, written by her and directed by me. But I think that's just because, generally speaking, I think that's most reflective of the process. But I think it doesn't reflect the ways in which like Issa's on set and like giving notes on performance and in the editing room and, like giving thoughts on set design and sending over costume ideas, and I think that's how a lot of people in film kind of, I think, often do work together. But I think for us, it's been really important to, I think, reflect the fact that, like, yes, I might be the director on the movie, but it's as a vision, for Cam and Faces of Death. That's something that we really built, as a team.
I'm just curious about your guys' relationship with the original Faces of Death and how this project came to be. Was this something that you wanted to remake, or did this come to you guys? How did that process work?
This came to us actually from this awesome exec, John Silk, who was at Legendary. And he kind of reached out to us and said, oh, we have this IP. Are you guys interested in this? He had seen Cam and kind of knew that we would have kind of a like out of the box idea. And so we actually hadn't heard of the original that we knew of. We went and watched the original, and that's when we realized we had actually seen parts of the original kind of online, ron.com or on some message boards or forums over the years, and kind of realizing that all of these little pieces were from the same source. But we had consumed them online, as like millennials growing up. We thought that was kind of, a cool way into the project, because when we're talking about where we see death now, of course it's online, and of course it's everywhere online, and wanting to dig in and kind of tell a story about our relationship to violence, our relationship to violent imagery was something that we kind of already wanted to do. And so it seemed kind of like the perfect avenue to find a way in. And ultimately we were excited too, because you can't really just do a straight remake of the original, right? It doesn't have a plot. It's not like a narrative. And so it was also this opportunity to tell like a completely original story just kind of about this cultural phenomenon, really, of Faces of Death.
And I also think that like it was an exciting opportunity because because of the nature of what Faces of Death is, because it's not a remake or a reboot, it's like just a movie about Faces of Death. It also got to be about a movie, like the movie is about being a movie that a major studio was like, hey, we should try to like turn Faces of Death into IP, which is like kind of an insane idea and like not necessarily in a great way. You know, it's like why like, you're trying to squeeze value out of everything you can, including like this fake snuff film compilation. Like, what does that say about like the media landscape in 2026? That
Right.
that's how big company is thinking. And so I think for us, it felt like also an interesting opportunity to make a movie that was, I think, also like I think able to kind of very nakedly reflect the like commercial filmmaking circumstances of the time, which ultimately I think made the movie a little bit harder to get out into the world at the end of the day, because you know, but I think that there was a fun opportunity that also presented to us.
I'm so glad you guys are bringing this up because when I first agreed to watch this movie,
which was it was a big jump for her.
I looked up obviously what the original was, and I was like, no, this sounds like this is going to be the worst. I picked the worst possible one to be watching. So when I watched the film, I was so relieved to see what you guys were doing with it, with this idea, because genuinely, this is like what draws me to horror to begin with, is not the shock and value of it. For me, what draws me to horror, and I think for a lot of our listeners, it's kind of the way that it can have a commentary on what we're going through day to day and reflects back to us like the reality of being in the world right now, and maybe a way we haven't been truly thinking about it. And so I was like, in watching this movie, I was thinking about the message and how important it is. And I was also thinking about both of you, like as filmmakers, how do you think you're so interested in how the media that we consume kind of shapes us? How do you where do you find your own responsibility in that, in like creating content? Is that something you guys talk about with each other in terms of like what kind of content, if audiences are impressionable, which they are, I think we're figuring that out. Like, is there a responsibility that filmmakers have when creating things for us to consume, basically?
I think that it's a big question because I think that like short answer, yes, every individual has a responsibility to, I think, engage with the world around them in a moral capacity. Uh, and so filmmakers are not for some reason exempt from, you know, a sort of need to be moral stewards of the world. I think that there is often a conflation of making a kind of like a piece of media that conveys a moral idea with itself being a moral act to have consumed or created that work of art, when in reality, the vast majority of kind of moral questions that confront you as a filmmaker are not necessarily just in regards to the story that you're telling or the film that you're making, but the fundamental process that exists in creating the thing. And so I think for us, like 100% every step of the way with me and Issa and any other collaborators that I think either of us work with, you know, we're always just first and foremost want to be good people with how we are working and with, you know, who we're working with, who we're choosing to work with, how we're choosing to work with them to the best of our ability. And then obviously, yeah, we also want to tell stories that we feel like are reflective of not just the world that we live in, but on some level, I think hopefully like I think film can do a really good job taking abstract ideas and making them concrete in certain ways, in certain narrative ways, and helping you see or visualize something that otherwise is kind of like an invisible idea. And I think a lot of the time, the stories that we're driven to tell are stories that are ultimately about like for us, like, okay, I'm trying to get my hands around something that's happening in the content creation ecosystem, something that's happening in climate change, something that's happening in online sex work. There's something that's a little out of reach that I can't quite say, but if I make a movie about it, if I go through this process of telling the story with a group of people and we do it the right way, then maybe we've actually helped make something concrete that was not concrete before. And I think the things that we choose to do that with are often, ideas that we do think have, on a personal level, a certain amount of political relevancy. But I also think it's just really, really, really important not to get too high on your own supply when it comes to like the good that you're doing in the world by making or consuming a movie, because it's just a movie.
Yeah, it's dangerous to think that way to a certain degree. Wait, that actually makes me think a little bit about how this movie focused on content moderation and kind of like the complications there. And in the movie, we see dozens of, social media clips, violent or otherwise. What was the process for you guys? Like, were any of them real clips? Were they all there? Yeah, he says nodding. Did you create any of your own clips, or how did that kind of process work?
I mean, I think this ties nicely into the point we were just talking about. We had a lot of discussions about sourcing some of these videos. Some are created, most of them are licensed, and a lot of them exist in the world. And some of them are real death. Like, there is real snuff in our movie. There's probably more real snuff in our movie than in the original. And I think that that was a conversation that we had, a lot with a lot of people to figure out, where do we stand on this? But ultimately, I think that, when I open my phone, I see dead people,
Right.
like, period. And we're served this stuff over and over and over again without asking for it, without seeking it out, because we are engaging with algorithms which are designed to maximize engagement and have kind of no other process beyond that. And they know that things that shock us, that scare us, that make us angry are going to keep us engaged. And ultimately, we wanted to kind of recontextualize some of this imagery by putting it in a movie theater, by putting it in a major studio movie, by you're sitting at the AMC, you're watching this and you're saying, is it okay that I'm watching this? Like, why am I watching this? And those are the exact questions that we want you to leave with, so that when you pick up your phone, a context in which these images are now normalized and are everyday, you're also hopefully taking some of that questioning with you when you look at your phone and you're like, wait, why am I being served this? And what am I doing by engaging with it? What is this tech company doing by serving it to me? Ultimately, that recontextualization is kind of what we wanted to do. And so you couldn't really do that without showing genuine death, because ultimately, I mean, you guys probably grew up on the same internet that we did. Like, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And it would be somewhat disingenuous to not include it in the film when I can pick up my phone and see it every day.
Totally.
Yeah.
On that note, do you guys have any like social media rules for yourselves in terms of like limiting some of the engagement with that, just as like a, from your own personal standpoints?
Generally speaking, my rule for myself on social media is you probably shouldn't post. Like, generally speaking, don't. And
sure.
then if and still, because I have a really snarky sense of humor, and like I'm just a sarcastic person, and I even got in trouble recently because there was like a really great image of Dacre in the movie that was put out by like Bloody Disgusting or something, and it was like, first look of Dacre Montgomery in Faces of Death, and I quote tweeted it and I said, this is also the first I'm seeing of this, which I thought was very funny, because it's like, yeah, obviously I've seen Dacre in the movie, but then like a bunch of people were like, oh, the director's mad about the film, and like, oh no, and like and I like got a call from the distributor being like, did we do something wrong? And I'm like, no, that's just me. So generally speaking, I just shouldn't say anything on the internet, because it's a great recipe to get yourself in trouble.
It's a crazy place.
I feel like also that specific example is really illuminating how deeply we need just more media literacy to begin with, probably in this country in general.
Right. But this is, I think, to Issa's point about like, at the same time, the context by which we see stuff, the way that it's put into our feed. It's like this is a computer delivering stuff to us, saying like, look at this. And it's like, it knows that if it buries this little retweet of mine inside of like 3 other passive aggressive angry posts, like it's actually more likely to be misinterpreted by the person.
Right.
And I also think it's very interesting that like there's been a lot of kind of like little mini scandals within the film industry as of late. People just like don't comment on stuff anymore. Like people get super angry about something that somebody did, and now no one says anything. No one tries to do like the Instagram apology. No one like tries to like give context or explain. They just say nothing, and then within 48 hours it's like gone. And like it's as if it never happened. And like on some level, it's like I'm equally as disturbed by that, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's the thing is like the internet has engendered so much empty anger about nothing that it's also harmed our ability to get angry about the stuff that really matters.
It's just constant overwhelm, just one thing after another. Yeah. Well, what was your guys' favorite part of making this movie, or like a favorite memory from set or something?
My favorite memory was the oneer that we did. It's like over 3.5 minutes long.
Amazing.
We shot
it's all practical. There's no stitches.
All practical. There's like a wall. We go through a wall, we built a removable wall. There's a crane. So like the camera op goes through a window on a crane lowered down. And I think we did, I don't remember how many takes, not enough.
9 takes. 9 takes.
It was the middle of the night, and because we shot on film, we had this like digital monitor where we could see what the camera was shooting, but it was the only one. And so we had to follow, like it was like Dacre going up the stairs, camera op with the monitor, and then me and Danny like following in this line, like to chase the camera so that we could see the feed from the camera. And it was like, it felt like an Olympic sport. Like it really, like it felt like the closest that I think I will ever feel to an athlete is what orchestrating that felt like. And it kind of honestly reminded me of our theater days back in high school, where it's just like you have a massive group of people focused on one thing and everything is choreographed. And there's a fight scene in the oneer, there's a stunt in the oneer. It was crazy. And I think like watching that, I was like, this is the coolest thing in the history of anything ever. You know what I mean? Like I was high on that oneer. And also the tension of not knowing if you're going to pull it off, not knowing if it's actually.
Because the entire production schedule, like the entire production was built around that shot. Oof. Because when you think about like where Margot's apartment is, right? Like that because we wanted to always do it practically. It's like, okay, so you have to get a building that looks like an apartment building, but that's actually a guy's house. And then we built a hallway into the house that was like Margot's apartment. And then that's the hallway that has the removable wall. And then it was a whole thing. Like we got into something about the homeowner because we had to remove the windows so the Steadicam op can go through it. And like, he didn't want us to take out the window. And then our locations manager had to like spend 2 weeks begging and pleading with him. And like, and so it's like, and like, so the entire schedule, of this whole movie is revolving around getting this shot that like it's unclear if it's any piece of it is going to work, so anyway, that's that. For me, I think like my favorite, like it's there's not like a singular moment, but I think that like there's a way that I really had always wanted to shoot the suburbs in a horror movie with this kind of like this like hyper saturated like fakeness, that is still very real, right? It's not like Tim Burton's suburbs. It's not, Blue Velvet. It's like these contemporary suburbs that I've seen very like rarely, this kind of like McMansionville with these like giant expensive houses that like look like they're built out of plastic, and like how unnatural that is as like a place to live. Like it's like this is not a place for people. This is a place for dolls. Like, you know, and but this is like what we've built to kind of be like aspirational living in America. And I
Right.
find that so, and like even as a child, I found that like deeply, like I was always so disturbed. And like I would love to continue setting movies in that world because it feels so dystopian to me. Like these are homes. And so I think just like there's just like some of these images of like during the kind of like house escape sequence, you know, I feel like that's the closest I've gotten to like a particular vision that I've had for myself since I was young as a filmmaker of kind of like a particular mood that I've been trying to create. And I think as a filmmaker, like you're always compromising. You're always like further away from the vision that you want to be. It's hard to get there. It takes a lot of experience and a lot of good luck and a lot of, in this case, good weather. You know what I mean? For these things to like collide in the right way. And they did for those images. And so I just, you know, I think like that image of like Arthur screaming with the different colored contacts and this guy, you got this like Nazi in the suburbs and he's got these contact lens and, you know, it's an image that could only come from this movie. And I think from this experience that Issa and I had together growing up. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the scariest parts of the movie to me is after jumping over that fence and just realizing it's just like flat nothing all around and just like perfect eye line in every direction. I'm like, no, fuck. But yeah, it's a really normal and yet deeply unsettling setting. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, congrats, you guys. I'm very excited to tell all of our listeners to go see this movie. Henley watched it. If Henley can do it, you all can too. Bring a friend, like we said. Communal
it's
spaces.
No worse than what you see on your phone every day.
Literally.
It's just more entertaining.
There you go.
Literally. Yes. And thank you guys so much. It was such a pleasure to get to talk to both of you. And
thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.